I can edit you out if you say anything irreparable.
Anything that I might cancel me?
Yeah, maybe we should get canceled because
Oh shit,
at this
dude.
point, no publicity is bad publicity. So, like, hey, did you hear that podcast got canceled? Like, I never heard of it in the first place, but now I'm gonna look it up.
It's like, yeah,
Let's start backwards.
watch our train wreck. Yeah, that's
You
hilarious.
know, a computer they just register the train wreck as attention, not that someone's died. They're like, oh, I guess train wrecks are good.
Yeah,
Just terrifying.
that's funny.
I was watching this documentary called Turning Point, and it like talks about a lot of stuff that was declassified, like the response to 9/11,
Oh, okay.
and goes through the whole like illegitimacy of weapons of mass destruction and the shit show that transpired in Iraq. It was really disheartening to watch because it's like there was this message that we're gonna be proactive and mitigate terrorism, yet at least the number that we have is that we killed 200,000 Iraqi civilians. I'm like, how does that mitigate terrorism? Like
Genocide.
that,
yeah.
but that's like that. No, that's how terrorism is created in large. So
I have not seen that documentary. What is it called again?
Turning Point.
Turning Point. Sounds like
It
something I
also
would have
goes
seen,
through, you know, like in the 2000s, there was all this like media talking about waterboarding and black sites and stuff like that. And since then, we've realized that when you torture someone to that degree, there's no compliance. So, you know, think about it. Like I'm stuffed in a box 24 hours a day. I'm not allowed to stand, like waterboard, all this. And someone asks me, hey, do you know this guy? Yeah, I know that guy. I'll tell you all about him. You're letting me out of this box? So it created like a complete confounded informational stream where it was like just reinforcing implicit bias and like assumption as to what they want answers to
the
be.
psychologists that the CIA used to come up with their torture program used very sketchy understanding of human dynamics and behaviorism anyway.
Yeah.
And they based their interrogation program off of just like essentially fantasy.
Yeah, I'm scared. I want to get answers as fast as possible, even if those answers cannot be corroborated.
But you would
as
think
fact.
that like with all of the, because like every evil regime, maybe not every, that's an exaggeration, but most evil regimes, like you think the Nazis, you think the Spanish Inquisition, you think the Salem witch trials, you know, whatever happened during the Tudor era where they were torturing people because there's always this paranoia that there's like plots against the king or the queen. They always documented their tortures. They documented the interrogation process, right? Because they thought they were in the right. So that's why they documented it. And you would think that like whoever from the CIA in the early 2000s was creating this interrogation program would have had access to that information and realized that people are going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you just to get the pain to stop or just to get, you know, out of, like you said, out of the box. And that's not actionable, verifiable, quote unquote, truthful information. It's always just ultimately a program just about harming people.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder like about how's the psychopathology of the people running these programs too.
Yeah, and all the mental gymnastics to pursue that type of agenda.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Not that I would have any inclination to pursue. Like often when people talk about wanting to go into forensic psychology, I'm just like, oh God, why? You know, like, why do you want to get into the mind of a serial killer? To do what? It doesn't prevent serial killing.
Right. I did like Mindhunter though. Did you see that?
Mike liked that one too. I know there was only 2 seasons though.
Yeah. I think it was really expensive to produce
Oh, is that why they stopped it?
because they had to. It was from the, I guess, 70s, 60s, 70s. Anytime a show's like that, you have to have like you have to pay for everything that looks like it's from the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
would make sense.
enjoy shows like that, but I don't think I would particularly enjoy like fully studying that. I
No.
mean, I don't see the value really.
No, I'm a big believer in that philosophical concept, what you consume, you become. Not trying to suggest that people who study serial killers become serial killers, but just that evil, it's like, where does that go?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if you're watching, yeah, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm watching all these like crime stuff shows before I go to sleep. I'm like, I wonder what that does, what
Why
impact that
do
has on my
Americans do that?
psyche.
So many Americans do that. It's like they find it relaxing. Like,
Yeah,
how is that
it's
relaxing?
culturally demented. It's like there's something wrong here.
It's kind of, well, you know what? I shouldn't laugh because when I grew up in New Orleans, I mean, my bedroom was was the first, was alongside the main street, right? So like you had to walk up a set of stairs, and then we had this giant porch, and then my bedroom was right there. And all night long, police cars, sirens, gunshots, all night long. Like that was like what lulled me to sleep at night. And it just became like the backdrop of my life. I didn't even notice it after a while until we moved to Texas and we lived out in the country. And the only thing putting me to sleep at night was the sound of crickets. For the first 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep. It was too
Yeah.
quiet.
It's interesting how like the environment, if it changes, you begin to realize the other environment. There's a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I stay in a city when I travel, like it's fucking loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember we went on vacation to Washington, D.C., and it was the same thing, sirens all night long. I had no problem with it. I slept with the windows open because it was hot. Didn't bother me in the
I have
slightest.
a new neighbor and their dogs bark for like 20 minutes straight at 6 a.m.
Oh my God.
It's
Now
so
that I
like
couldn't tolerate.
I wake up wanting to murder animals. Like that's my first thought. Just violence.
You know what, though? I'm the same way this morning. This is so gross and TMI. But Mike woke me up to just, of course, he like just had to let one rip, right? It just farted, right? And it woke me up, and I had this like half awareness of all the mean things I said to him. And I do recall telling him that I was
You just shamed him.
he has no shame, but like I had this half awareness of telling him I was going to put him in a nursing home and let the nurses deal with him where he could be abused. I was like, I was so irritated.
How we wake up is important. I mean,
it is. I cannot stand being woken up. My alarm is set for a certain time, and I need to wake up at that time.
well, there's something wrong with me. Like I wake up and I do not feel refreshed or like excited. I don't know if you're a morning person, but like
No.
I'm a night person, and when I wake up, I'm like offended that
Yeah.
the world awoke me. Like it's just like, what? There's something wrong. Like there's something wrong when I wake up.
Yeah, I'm a night owl too, and that's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
No, the
Like
world
some
is
people
not built
wake
for
up
us.
and they're just like, yeah, let's watch the sunrise, get some coffee, like the day's getting started. We've got excitement going. Like, man, that'd be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah, I mean that old adage, the early bird gets the worm. I mean that the whole world is like the economy is built off the backs of those people. Those are the people who profit the most. I'm sure there's even been research done on night owls versus morning people and like how much money they make over a lifetime.
So that's what's wrong with me.
Yeah, exactly. My brain doesn't wake up until 10 a.m. I mean,
Yeah.
I did that 23andMe, and genetically it says that like I'm supposed to wake up at 7:11. It's the weirdest time frame, but it's like that's like my ideal wake up, and it made me laugh because it's true. Like before I even read that in the 23andMe report, I knew that because that's just when I woke up naturally. And
So do you wake up around 7 naturally?
I feel the best when I wake up between 7 and 7:30. But
what time do you go to sleep if you wake up that time
if I can go
naturally?
to about 11 to 11:30, that's like if I know I have to do things in the morning. But if I don't have to do anything, then I could easily stay up till like 2 in the morning.
Yeah. It's kind of a curse. Me
It
too.
is. It really is a curse. But that's when I'm most creative.
I get this FOMO, like I'm gonna miss like my time or something. Like I've always viewed the night as my time.
Oh, it gets worse when you have kids. Yeah,
Yeah, I
because
can
that's
imagine.
exactly right. Like it is my time to like
And like
watch
when
my
I wake
shows
up,
or
I
yeah.
perceive it as I owe the world. There's responsibility to do these things.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I don't like the morning, obviously.
Yeah, that's when we had to get up and go to
Because if
school.
at night everyone's asleep, so I owe nothing to no one. It's like
Nobody's
it's
asking you for
perfect.
anything.
Yeah, and there's zero responsibility. It's like I can be an adolescent at night or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when the world doesn't operate that way, it's
No.
like fuck. Yeah, that's something that I always cherished about my grandmother is that she was so effective at getting me up. Like she knew intuitively, like Evan needs to be softly introduced to the world. like there needs to be like a safe, soft, warm invitation
How
for
did she
Evan
get
to.
you up in the morning?
She would just be like really nice and patient and inviting. Whereas when I was younger with other people, it would be like, you got to get up, you got to do these things. And it would just
Oh, it
like,
was very demanding.
yeah. I never really responded well to that. Yeah.
Do you think you have a version of pathological demand avoidance?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Your demands. Fuck your demands. Just obstinance.
My brother's masterful at that. It cracks me up. Yeah, that was his number one symptom of whatever he's got going on. It could be anything. Anything, even in his own best interest.
It makes business owners.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneurship, at its core, is full of people that don't like to be told what to do, or that it feels confining. Like I remember when I worked more 9 to 5, it felt like my spirit was confined. That I was having to operate on someone else's agenda, like full time, and that was soul sucking to me.
Yeah, I can't. Well, no, I take that back. I think corporations have really benefited from me being more on like the compliance side of things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I've had to really have a come to Jesus with myself about that. Because yeah, I mean,
well, I was always impressed that you stayed at our company, like past when I left. I was like, wow, you're really sticking it out here.
I think I lasted like 3 more months after you.
I thought it was way longer than that.
When did you leave? Like what month?
June of 21.
Okay,
Or
I
20.
left September of 21.
Or was it 20? I guess it was 21. Yeah.
Yeah, I left September.
Oh, I guess it wasn't that long.
It just
I felt
felt
like it was
that
like a
long.
year or something, but
Yeah, 1 month there was like 1 year in the real world.
yeah.
If they ever want to study like time warps, they should go to a substance use treatment center.
I'm still trying to get my termination date effective in the benefits system. I'm trying to roll over my IRA, and they still haven't put that I'm not an employee. It's been like 3 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They didn't even offer me that.
And then, I demanded it, but they, I think it's Blue Star, some like random IRA company, but they're like, yeah, well, we'll send an email out. It'll notify them to adjust the system. And then I'm like, yeah, so what happens when they don't do that? Because that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't understand. You can't just toggle something in your system and then the HR that's non-existent in this company is going to see it and then adjust accordingly. That's not going to work.
No, but how would you get your money?
They have, so the where I have my IRA with the previous company has to say that I was terminated on this date, and then it will release that to where I want to put it. Because they're attached.
But if they
to your,
don't do that, if they don't tick and tie that one dot,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can get it somehow because it's tied to my social security number. But
no, that sounds like par for the course over there in terms of their chaos and mismanagement.
yes.
Well, good luck with that. Yeah, I've had to roll over all my IRAs too. I have one last one to do because it's just this year that I'm starting to see returns, like significant returns. All the other years, it's keeping up with inflation, but it's not nearly what it should be.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put it all with one provider. That's not the right word. What's the right word? One investment company.
Yeah, it's a clusterfuck to try to get everything synchronized.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what should we talk about so this doesn't turn into another super boring episode?
Let's talk about termites.
Termites? Like mental termites?
No, I was referring to one of the episodes like a year ago. We just talked about termite damage.
Hopefully, was that as a metaphor or something?
No, it actually wasn't.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah. It was a very enthralling time.
Oh my
God.
Yeah. I was thinking about archetypes.
What about archetypes?
The shadow and light of archetypes. Like I know what we need to talk about. The archetype.
Sound like Canadian right then. About.
Oh, I know. That's my grandparents and their Swedish heritage. Okay. What is it called? The Devouring Mother?
The Devouring Mother.
You never heard of the archetype of the Devouring Mother?
Oh, I think I've read that, yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's really no light to the Devouring Mother, but I'm sure it is.
Sounds pretty dark.
It is. It's kind of like the narcissistic quality of a mother. Overly nurturing, smothering, and being overly protective is one manifestation of it. But just where the parent is, obviously it's an extreme form of codependency, but okay, that's one idea.
Okay, so the archetype of a mother being overly protective and nurturing to a child.
But to the child's detriment.
Right.
Yeah, so this is one of Carl Jung's interpretations of the shadow aspects of the mother archetype. Okay, so then the devouring mother is the shadow of the mother archetype. Okay. I don't know where do we want to go with this.
So the devouring mother.
Yeah, so that's the shadow side of the mother archetype, meaning the darker side, the one fraught with challenges. Well, how do you see people's conflicts with motherhood appear in your practice?
I see middle-aged males still having enmeshed relationships with their mothers,
Mm.
where there's a lot of defined roles that happen in childhood that are very much prominent in their 60s. That's focused predominantly on appeasement from the mother and the unwillingness to confront like latent resentment or any kind of past event with the mother.
So then what would be the opposite of a devouring mother? The light side.
Well, I guess that...
Oh, the nurturing mother. Okay.
Yeah, and I anecdotally in my own life, I have experienced that with partners where there's a difference between feeling loved for who you are and feeling loved because they want to feel important. So am I exuding love based on confidence and self and worthiness of self? Or am I expelling love to you because I'm afraid that if I don't properly, you're going to leave, or something to that effect? It's like I'm showing nurturance out of fear and insecurity as opposed to confidence and in connection.
Is this coming from you, or this is kind of what you're receiving?
Like what I would receive.
Oh, okay.
Like it's like I'm receiving this affection and intimacy from a place of insecurity.
And what do you do with that though?
Yeah, you get what people nowadays would call the ick. You get the ick.
Like, what is that, like physically, like what does that feel like when you're kind of getting love and nurturance, but it's more from like an anxious place?
It feels burdensome and disingenuous. Then the shitty part is you can't process that with the person because it's like a complete shadow. If we're talking about shadow mother stuff, right? It's like the shadow insinuates that there's no conceptual understanding or insight to what that function is.
And so like they just blame you for what, being like a jackass who won't accept their love or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So how do you avoid these people?
I don't know. I need to figure that out. Maybe that's...
I went out to dinner with my son the other night and I told him, I was like, before you get married, I want a full psychological evaluation on whoever you choose to be your wife before you get married. Like no stone unturned.
Yeah, it's tough.
Of course he had to laugh, but I don't know. There's no way I could be in the dating world nowadays.
Yeah, I just got off the app recently. I need a cleanse. A cleanse of the spirit.
Oh God, I'll get you some sage.
Yeah. I need a prayer shawl. I need someone to send me a prayer shawl.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about this, like devouring mother archetype. And just the damage that type of person can do to their own kids, that sort of dependency that it creates. But like, what do you do when you have a client who has sort of like, I mean, I guess they're kind of like straddling that fence between the pre-contemplation and the contemplation stage of change, where they recognize, okay, yeah, this is unwanted behavior from my mom. She's like overly involved. You know, one client even says, okay, she's stalking me, meaning like the mother will just show up at her office or just show up at her apartment. And it's like, you know, kind of like almost getting to the sense that like the mother's like following her around, but yet she struggles with setting firm limits and boundaries with her mom, because I'm sure there's some sort of benefit that she's also getting from the mother. It's like she has to put up with a lot of bullshit just to get like one attachment need met.
I find when people are straddling pre-contemplation and contemplation, they become angry because they're getting this new insight. So the light's being shown upon the shadow part of whatever dysfunction is, yet they are drawn and pulled to not break any rules and to maintain that shadow's function.
Yeah, because it's a cognitive dissonance, right? But that
And I
anger,
think
though,
that
is the
fear,
anger coming from a place of like, I know I've been treated wrong and therefore I'm angry about it? Or is it anger as in like, how dare you point out
I think it's self-hatred.
self-hatred? Okay.
I mean, not all the time, but I think it's maybe not anger, but like irritability,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, okay, I can no longer be on on the stand saying this is just how things are and it's happening to me. I'm beginning to see my role in maintaining this dysfunction, and then we're talking further each week, and I'm talking about how I'm maintaining the role despite the new insight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, then they get angry at themselves. Yeah, I can see that because it's almost like they're violating their own internal authenticity, their own internal self, the core self.
And the lack of boundary with a parent often seems to be the belief that my boundary is going to dysregulate them.
Dysregulate the parent.
Yeah.
That is the fear, right? Because like as little kids, we're taught, especially when if we're raised by dysfunctional parents or parents who are emotionally dysregulated, yeah, that you're not allowed to have boundaries. You're not allowed to have a sense of self. You just
And I
have to
need to
endure.
adhere and be flubber to whatever the demands are of the parent
Mm-hmm.
to maintain my experience of love from them, even if it is harmful.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
So
like if,
the
yeah,
pursuit of that devouring mother the way that begins, I would imagine has to come from the mother's own shame. So what do you think a mother's shame would be as a propeller to over caretaking and over loving and being enmeshed with their child?
I think the negative core belief would be I am worthless. And so like I find my worth and value in making you dependent upon me. So if you are dependent upon me, then I therefore have value. I think a lot of people struggle with this concept that human beings have value just because they're human beings.
It's like a social Munchausen proxy.
Yeah, I could see
Like,
that.
like we're not feeding you arsenic for cough, and then you're like slowly dying in your bed, so we feel needed. But there's all these social insidious constraints that create that same type of dynamic
Mm-hmm.
of like, I'm gonna make you fully dependent, like me speaking to a child, I'm gonna make you fully dependent. That way, whenever you fall, you need me.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this with some of my sister's friends that are in their fucking mid 30s or 40s, where they make hundreds of thousands a year, but their parents still buy them cars.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, whoa, that's interesting. Because, like I've talked about before on here, where I've had to have candid conversation with certain clients where their parents have demands of them and expectations, but there's still financial ties to their parents. They still are reliant on their parents for things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the way to get away from that is to become fully independent.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, that's fascinating that you have high producing of professionals in their late 30s, early 40s that opt to allow their parents, hey, we're going to gift you this car. Yet it's a tentacle. It's, oh, well, I bought you this car, therefore I can maintain more input in your life.
Oh, okay. So it's not truly a gift. It comes with conditions.
Right.
But then it's almost like the adult child is willing to, are you saying that the adult child is willing to accept that car even though they know the conditions persist, that the parent's going to be more involved in their lives?
Apparently. Yeah.
And then did they like get pissy about that, or they're just kind of like, well, it just is what it is?
I think they get pissy about it.
It's like they can't have it both ways, though.
No. But I think that would be an example of, like, in adulthood, allowing a parent to maintain that type of power differential.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the surface, it looks nice. Hey, we have extra money. We'll help you with this car. But what's the condition? Now they're giving me a financial demand about my mortgage or where I'm living.
Yeah. Or, yeah, then it was like all that quote free advice that comes up. I guess
I just found it interesting because I would have assumed, oh, like they needed financial support.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't.
Mm.
Like, huh.
They just like free shit. They're just part of the free shit army.
I guess so. Or
it would just be so bananas to me. Like if my dad was like, "Hey, Melissa, I know that like your minivan's, kind of getting old, and I'm just gonna buy you a new car." That would just really bother me, like because my dad's retired. I don't need his money.
Yeah,
I would want him to keep his money for his retirement.
But that might be they've learned, oh, this provides value to my parent for them to feel needed.
Okay.
And so they're willing to allow that.
And so then the cycle just continues.
Yeah. And then the parent feels important because I'm helping support my child, and therefore offers more and more input as to how their adult child is living their life.
Do you think the parent might feel fear being abandoned?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what comes up for me because I could see that. It's like
a lasso.
It's a lasso. Like, yeah, if I buy for you and do for you, then you'll stay in my life because I'm afraid of you leaving and going.
It's a reminder that you need me.
Yeah.
I have value in your life. I can still provide.
That's got to cause a lot of problems with like in-laws, or like
yeah.
Like the spouse.
Yeah. It just never occurred to me that like that was a thing.
I just read, it's funny that you mentioned that because I just read a headline and I want to go back and find the actual article, but it's talking about how adults living off of their parents' wealth. So the parents are still alive. The child's now an adult. The adult child living off the parents' wealth is creating a new class of wealth that we have not seen before in America.
Because the kid is also making substantial money?
The kid is also making substantial money, or even if the kid is not making substantial money, but now they're living above and beyond their own means. So, somebody who's working, I'm not trying to throw the Starbucks folks under the bus, but, like, let's just say like somebody's working a retail job or a job in a coffee shop. They wouldn't necessarily be able to afford a European vacation, right? You wouldn't think, because they would hopefully prioritize, housing and medical costs and food. But now if you have access to your parents' money and your parents are taking you on vacation or giving you a lump sum of cash, it's giving you a window or like an opportunity to pursue more high ticket or luxury items than you would have been able to afford on your own. So it's challenging the marketers. How do we go after these folks who have maybe adults, but now have access to their parents' money? What kinds of things would they want to buy for themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually it's kind of like the lifestyle things.
And it makes them consistently dependent on parents because if I only have to work 24 hours a week because Starbucks isn't doing a lot of full-time
Right.
employment opportunity, then why would I do anything else? I get to go on all my trips. Less demand, less responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would also create an ongoing like superhero mentality of parent.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like that's just kind of more of a benevolent or benign. Well, it's a slow boil effect of the devouring mother, right? Because like if you're understanding of gifting the car or allowing your child to have access to your credit card so that they can go on these European vacations as being a form of nurturing or a form of caretaking, it's like the slow boil effect is that you're creating dependency, but I think the effects of that dependency aren't as insidious or as obvious as maybe what you and I saw of the devouring mother when we were working in the substance use treatment center, right? Because those
Right.
folks, then to cope with the emotional pain of being coddled, use drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, and arguably that was a reenactment too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'll take the toxic medicine and stay weak in my own life so that you can continue to fund all my treatment stays
Mm-hmm.
and let me back into your house when I get finished here. I think that's immensely pervasive and overlooked. Um, the amount of perceived importance and worth parents derive from a child having addiction, mental illness.
Meaning what? Like, what do you mean derive worth?
I'm if I have, especially um, if there's mental illness or addiction in that family system, often the parents feel valued and needed um, from that dysfunction.
Oh, because they're helping.
Right.
I'm helping my child because I'm funding his or her treatment stay.
Yeah, it happened in my own life where my parents would be very inactive and disengaged, yet if I got arrested, they were there within moments.
Okay. It was a call to action.
Yeah, if I went to a psych ward, everything stopped. Everyone was really engaged and great, really.
But that's so seductive. Like how do you break like what was the turning point for you where you're like, this is not what I want for myself. I don't want my parents' attention in this way.
Yeah, I think it shifted for me whenever that cycle had an impact on my desire to live. So that the saying with drugs where it's we can neither live with nor without,
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten to that level.
Okay.
And so I think it got away from that whole oh I'm feeling cared for and loved by these people because I'm in crisis. It like went past that.
So the consequences started to, for you personally, grossly outweigh any
Any
sort of
reward.
like attention or caretaking you might have gotten from your parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is really one of my first memories of that where I was like aware of me having a conscious effort to be in like a crisis to receive love
Mm-hmm.
was I don't know what was happening, but I was like 12 or something. And I was in my room and I was like I had this child tantrum where it was like this rageful like physical energy that happened. And my dad had grabbed me and held me on the floor to try to calm me down. And I remember knowing that I could easily break out of this grasp
Mm-hmm.
and choosing not to because he was there and showing up.
Mm.
And then you can see it echo into much larger areas from that.
So he was being nurturing in that moment in time.
Yeah, and I knew I could get out of this. But there
Mm-hmm.
was a part of me that felt comforting and also not wanting to scare him anymore.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like that was an appropriate way for your dad to handle that situation.
Yeah. But it's like, well, what about all these other things that led to that?
Okay, that led to you getting so dysregulated that you had this childlike tantrum.
Right. We're only treating the iceberg. We're waiting for the loud noise.
Okay. So your dad didn't get more curious about what was leading up to this.
No.
Okay. Hmm.
But if you think of like, say, living in an apartment and your fire alarm goes off, the fire could be anywhere in the building. Right? It's not the alarm that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, it's signaling that there is a problem, but it's not the problem. And it doesn't tell us really anything except there is one. It doesn't tell us where it is or how it got there.
Okay. So this suddenly what came up for me when you said that is like, I see this with mothers, like mothers that I kind of like mothers of friends that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than get curious about like what their daughter, like my childhood friends were getting upset about, like rather than digging deep and getting an understanding of what was creating them to be so upset or to start, their grades start falling, they'd just be like, well, I can see you're sad, so why don't we just go out and get some ice cream?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you just need to like,
Cheer up.
cheer up and yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that is the early infancy of what I find as an ongoing theme with clients is this belief that we need to learn how to fix our feelings.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
It's like,
Definitely.
no, we cannot fix our feelings, right? That's why you're here. Your attempt to fix the feeling through avoidance or rumination cycles.
Yeah, no, it's like we have to that's a really hard skill, honestly, because it sounds so easy. It's like, oh, you just need to tolerate the full cornucopia of all your emotions. I mean, that sounds so easy, right? Like that's just the prescription. But to actually do that, I mean, that can take years.
It's a lifelong
That is
process.
yeah, it is a lifelong process. Like, because now I'm thinking about like,
Because I do that
recovery.
shit too, and I have to like catch myself. I'm like, wait, we don't need to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be present with it. Like, you
Yeah.
want to make a decision later on, like you can go for it, but you don't need to make it right now in an attempt to change how you're feeling. Because there's all these unintended cyclical consequences from that reaction.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes with the idea of like we said rumination, but like rumination can be internalized ranting, right?
Mm.
And some people argue that you can rant and it'll ultimately, regulate your nervous system. So you go back through like the cycle of like from a dorsal vagal to the sympathetic, to kind of more to a ventral vagal state. And that may be true, right? But for some people, I think they get addicted almost to that internal ranting, to that rumination, or actually ranting out loud as a way to avoid feeling the underlying feelings of the rant. I mean, you could argue, okay, then maybe they're ranting to get themselves to a place of safety, but
Creates the
if you,
illusion of
yeah, it
safety.
can, it can definitely create an illusion, and it can create an illusion of being in control too.
And yeah, if we lead our lives believing that if I'm to feel fully, I will be out of control.
Mm-hmm.
If we really believe that, we're going to have a lot of issues. So a lot of the process in therapy is to realize I can feel in control of my own life while feeling something big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe that's part of like the devouring mother is that fear of allowing the child to feel his or her own feelings. So they become overly protective, smothering, protective. I mean, overly nurturing,
That would be the light.
possessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the light of the devouring mother is I'm trying to protect my child.
At least that's the, yeah. I
That's
mean,
what
like the
the mother
intention
would
of it.
say is the
Yeah, they
reason.
would argue that, right? They would argue that I'm trying to protect my child.
But that goes back to what we were talking about with family codependent systems when we were talking about Jerry at Thanksgiving cutting the turkey, right? It's like
Yeah.
this false sense of protection actually exacerbates the danger. So I'm going to protect you at Christmas from feeling uncomfortable that your son is still drinking. And so by way of avoiding. But then if that avoidance works, it only ingrains the dysfunction further and continues the abuse without boundary.
Yeah.
But I do kind of wonder, like, man, can all this be simplified? Like all this psychotherapy stuff, can it be simplified down to it being either an avoidance or a rumination of feeling?
And when you say rumination, what do you mean?
Rumination would like we were talking about earlier with the
Like the
ranting
overthinking?
internally in the mind, overthinking,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how none of this was my fault or all of it was.
So, like, if you could simplify what again? Say that.
Like psychotherapy or the healing, it's like the core part often seems to be either obsession or avoidance with with feeling from thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Yeah, like that's just brought up for me this one client who, as a way to avoid feeling, she goes into what I call storytelling, and suddenly, like in her stories, I had to let her do it like 2 times to see that there was a pattern here.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, in her stories, we're now talking about details, seemingly irrelevant details, like down to what type of jeans somebody was wearing and what pictures were on the wall of the story. And I have to cut her off and bring her back and ask more experiential process questions to get her to connect to the feeling state of this story. Otherwise, it just becomes more of like a report that you would read, so like a deposition. So and so said this. So and so said that. So and so was wearing Levi jeans. So and so hung
Well, it's a
XYZ pictures on the wall.
A childlike adaptive state to have this real low semblance understanding of an emotion, and then seek outside reasons as to why that emotion has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the sense that she was like feeling something or trying to avoid feeling something, and so to fill the air, fill the space, like a magic trick, I want you to look over here.
Going to the content.
Yeah, going into the content rather than the process. And so that, yeah. But I then think, okay, well, how did she live her life? I mean, she had to live her life doing this too. Like her relationships,
Right, it's a
aren't
metaphor
based on substance. They're just kind of based on pedantic details that don't
right,
have
as
any
opposed
bearing on
to
anything.
focusing on her own internal experience sitting in that room. She distracts with how level the picture frame was on the wall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and she's struggling with her own archetype of the nurturing mother versus the devouring mother too. She would argue that she was being the nurturing mother, but I think the evidence is there just based upon how the story went that she unintentionally became the devouring mother.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do a little more of Devouring Mother next time, because there's this book I'm gonna grab from my office that I think touches on a lot of this too, and I'll try to prepare myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
and we can really dive into the light and the shadow of devouring mother.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I mean, none of this that we're talking about is anything we're we created ourselves, but nonetheless, it's an opportunity to be educated.
Yeah.